Hey, doing good, bud. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And here's Pastor Brian. He's arrived. How are you, sir? You don't need your earbuds in to just answer the question. We've got the microphone for you.
Wait, let me get these in.
Because we want to hear the sound of your voice.
Yeah. No, I'm doing great. I was in a meeting, and I just happened to glance at my watch and realized, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late for the radio.
Yes.
So, but it was an important meeting. I was discussing worldwide missions. So.
Oh, yes, very important.
Yep.
Yep. And the world is a mess right now.
Oh,
so, man, it's a good idea to talk about missions.
Boy, it is a mess. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
So many crazy things. I was telling somebody the other day, I was thinking about, when we turn in, each decade, you sort of have some expectation for improvement. Things are going to get better. And I remember transitioning out of the, 20th century into the 21st and thinking man, 21st century, this could be great.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been absolutely nuts for 21 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And but here we are, you know, that's why we're here. That's
right.
what the gospel's for.
Yep.
So it's good.
Yep. Whatever the Lord has for us to do. Let's be ready.
Are you taking a photograph with that cup there? You look like you're posing for a coffee.
Oh no! I'm anticipating a good caffeine buzz here in a moment. I like my caffeine twice a day, and so it takes me out of that dead sleepy moment. By the way, your daughter did a great job on that hairdo of yours. It looks great.
Well, I was thinking the other day, I really want to look more like Bobby. So that's what I told Kelsey. I said, give me the Bobby Conway cut.
And Kelsey said, we've had so many people come through asking for the Bobby cut. So
the Bobby cut.
The Bobby cut. By the way, your coffee, Bobby, would taste so much better in a K-Wave coffee mug. So I don't know why you're using that plain wrap mug, but we've got to get you a K-Wave mug.
Hey, I want a K-Wave mug and one of those K-Wave things that you guys have right here on my mic.
Flag. Yes.
Look, I don't have one of those. So
you don't.
Those are two articles that I would use in a North Carolina second.
North Carolina second. Well, we'll work on that. The mugs, for anybody interested, you can purchase them on the K-Wave store. K-Wave is our flagship radio station. If you go to the website, kwave.com, click store on the upper right, and then type in mug, it should come up. We've also got tote bags there. We do not sell mic flags because, nobody wants a mic flag, but you can definitely get some mugs and some tote bags, so check that out.
And I was wondering if Pastor Brian, if he would allow for me to have a K-Wave mug with sort of the oval shape like this. I don't like to drink out of a cup that's too squared off. And I think the current K-Wave cup is that way.
No, the K-Wave cup it's kind of like that. Maybe not quite as oval, but I get it. I mean, I'm very particular about my coffee cups.
You are?
Oh my
goodness.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah, I mean, we have got so many coffee cups, but every day I have to search for the right one because I just can't drink coffee out of the.
Some of them just feel funny on your lips. They just don't feel.
I don't like the big thick brim cups.
Yeah.
I'm just not into that.
Yeah. Of course, I have a problem with spoons, too. There's some spoons that just don't fit.
Let's talk about that, because my problem is with forks.
Forks?
Yeah.
Really? I would think that would be...
Yeah, and dull knives.
My family thinks I'm a bit OCD,
Well, I guess I am, too.
With my fork preferences.
No, it can be a problem. It can be a problem. So if you've got any advice, give us a call, 888-564-6170.
Yes.
Hey, so... this is a personal thing. Bobby, you sent me a text and you were telling me about the guys that are going to come out with you, and all of that's good. The other part of it about the one guy, being maybe a connector guy back there, we've got to get him connected with Jeff Geip in Nashville, because Jeff is kind of our point guy out there, and it would be great to connect those two guys. So I was too lazy to write you back. I just figured I'm going to see him on the radio. I will tell him in person.
Do you have any other unanswered text
that
messages
style.
that you can answer right now? Just
No, I think that's about it.
That's the only one. All right, 888-564-6173. Let's start with a question sent in on Facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective using the Messenger feature. Chris and Alyssa wrote in, I've recently been hearing a lot about the Enneagram, which, according to Wikipedia, is a model of the human psyche taught as a typology of 9 personality traits. Is it considered pagan, idolatry, or a form of witchcraft to find out what your Enneagram is? It reminds me a bit of horoscopes. Bobby, what say you?
Well, first off, all truth is God's truth. So I think sometimes when we encounter different beliefs outside of Christianity, not just even talking about the Enneagram, but just to make a point, we can be okay recognizing that all truth is God's truth. So it's not like Christianity is the only worldview that is capturing. We would say Christianity captures all truth and total truth, but there are other beliefs that capture partial truths. Right? So there's other belief systems that will give us instruction and guidance on moral values. Now, as it comes to the Enneagram, this is something that, at first I just saw as relatively harmless. And reading some of the stuff was kind of fun. And it's interesting how when you hear these descriptions, we as a family have went through it and we have sensed, oh man, I could really see some of this. I will say, Marcia Montenegro, you can read up on her stuff. She was brought out of the New Age movement. She's a Christian apologist, and she's addressed this in a podcast with Elisa Childers. And Elisa does a lot of stuff in the area of deconstruction and progressive Christianity. And so I would invite people to pay attention to that. Now, I know with Marcia, who I really respect her writing and her worldview and her thoughts on stuff, I would just say that obviously this is an area that she's come out of, and so she's going to be hyper sensitive to this. And I respect that, and I get that. I would say there isn't any science to back up the Enneagram, at least the last time I was looking into the Enneagram. I think that the cautions would be for some people is kind of the originators and the creators of the Enneagram are people who are a part of the occult and New Age. And so I think that that's something just for us to be aware of. I think that there are other tests that have been put out that could be very useful for us to look at as well, like strength finders that don't have maybe some of the occult concerns. Nevertheless, I think that people that are looking at this sometimes, like for me, I didn't hear about, oh, you know what, Bobby, you're a number whatever. I can't even, a number 4. That's what I think that my kids and my wife said I am. I didn't go to bed thinking, oh man, like how heavily influenced I am by the occult. So I think that some people could be that way, but I don't think everybody would be that way. So that's what I would say as it relates to that. Be cautious. Pay attention to Marcia's podcast with Elisa. Marcia knows a lot more than I do on this, but I'm just saying all truth is God's truth, and we can filter out the bad and chew on the good.
You can find that podcast on Alyssa Childers' website, which is alyssachilders.com, and just do a search for Enneagram. And if you're not sure how to spell Enneagram, just you could probably just type in the word Marcia, since that was her guest, Marcia Montenegro. Any thoughts, Brian?
Yeah. I have some thoughts. I think that, if you take the Enneagram and your life revolves around it, you make it like this is the final word on who I am and what I'm like and all of that. I think that's obviously problematic. Right. I think if you take it to just kind of it's a personality test. It's like Myers-Briggs, there's all these different kinds. Remember back in the 80s, it was, his face is in my mind, but the guy who wrote the Left Behind series, what's his name? Tim LaHaye. Tim LaHaye and his wife, Beverly LaHaye, they did this whole thing on temperaments, and they went through and they wrote a book on the various temperaments. It's very similar to that. So I think personally that trying to make some big connection to the occult with it and all of that, I think that's just kind of taking it overboard. Unless, of course, it's become your, like I said, if it's become your whole identity, your means of understanding yourself and all of that, which it might be for a non-Christian, but I find that hard to believe that a Christian would do that, There's a guy named Todd Wilson who wrote a great book on the Enneagram. And Todd's a theologian. He's a well-respected theologian. And he kind of stumbled on it. His sister-in-law was, doing it, and he thought it was kind of a joke, so he started messing around with it. And then he found that there were some really good, valuable things there that helped him kind of understand his own personality, helped his wife. So anyway, I'm an Enneagram 9, which is a peacemaker. So that is why I'm making peace here with the topic of the
that's
Enneagram.
That's why we call you Brian Broder Zen.
That's right. Yes.
That's right.
So anyway, yeah. I and Bobby, like even with say like the 12 steps and stuff, you're going to find people out there who will say, oh yeah, there's a cultic connection with the 12 steps, Bill and Bob, they got into weird occultic stuff too. I think people are always trying to attach the occult to everything, and it's just like, oh, come on, So anyway, I'm not really sympathetic toward that opinion, but I'm not going to base my life on the Enneagram either. So
that book that Brian mentioned by Todd Wilson is called "The Enneagram Goes to Church: Wisdom for Leadership, Worship, and Congregational Life." So check that out if you want. Bobby, anything else to add?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think it's like a wing is kind of your backup. So I'm a 4-wing 9.
Yeah.
And so I too am passionate about trying to, bring people together and stuff like that. I will, and then the 4 likes to be unique. And so I have to be careful, right? Theologically, that I'm always like, hey, how do I look at this differently or whatever? But I also know I want to fit within orthodoxy. We need boundaries. I will say, I think you are spot on to even bring up like an AA in that way. I do know that Marcia was talking about, people who are writing it and stuff were part of the occult or the person who wrote it. But here's the thing about that. There's people that could be part of other worldviews that could write stuff on personality as well. And it doesn't mean we only can listen to somebody who's writing from a Christian perspective. Now, I would need to go back and pay attention to some of the maybe real challenging warnings to make sure I'm not out of step. And as I know that if there was something that either of us, needed to be cautious about, we would want that. I think one of the things that I would just say as a caution about any of these personality tests is it can make us very self-focused. I want to know who I am, but one of the interesting things, Brian, that I'll say, I like to say this statement, because before I was a Christian, I was always trying to figure out what's my purpose in life? What's my purpose in life? And I used to think, wouldn't it be great if the government could come out with a pill and I could pop it and then I would just know why I'm here on earth. And, I would look for my purpose through hits of LSD, and I never found it until I fell in love with Jesus. And the truth of the matter is I ended up as an early Christian saying this statement: God revealed himself to me, and then he revealed me to myself. Yeah. And it was as I got to know who God was, I discovered who I was. Yep. And I think when we're trying to figure out our purpose, just focused on ourselves, I think that becomes really secular, unhealthy too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's great, because that is the reality that, Jesus said it, if you seek to find your life, which in essence is find yourself, if that's what you spend your life doing, in the end you lose. But if you give that up and give it over to the Lord for what he's created you for, then you win. And so I agree totally. So I'm an Enneagram 9 wing 8. So 8s are like every megachurch pastor in the world is an 8.
Really?
So megachurch pastors are guys who can build these big things and then probably destroy them as well because they're crazy. And so, I'm in this
Thank
room.
God you're a 9 too.
yeah. I'm in this room full of guys. Every guy in the room is an 8, and I'm in a 9, and I'm a 9, and I have to referee and kind of keep them back from self-destruction.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
So Chris and Alyssa, thank you for sending in your question on facebook.com/pastorsperspective using the messenger feature. And we'll now open up the phone lines, or go to the phone lines, I should say. 888-564-6173 is the number that you can call us today, Thursday, between now and 5 p.m. Pacific time. We'd love to hear from you at 888-564-6173. Let's talk to Kathleen, who lives near the happiest place on earth, Anaheim, California. Welcome to the program, Kathleen.
Yes.
How are you?
I'd like to know, is Mormon a cult?
Is Mormonism a cult? Why do you ask? Do you know somebody who's involved?
Yes, I know. I went to that church too for a few minutes, and I'm just wondering if I should, continue to listen to some that says no, it's not a cult, and she's Mormon, and then my other friend is not a cult or not a Mormon. She just regular Christianity, and I would like to know, for my own personal reasons, are they a cult?
Yeah. Yeah, we would advise you, Kathleen, to not engage, with Mormonism in the sense that you're going to become a Mormon or you're going to attend Mormon services, because it is a cult. It is what you call a pseudo-Christian cult, and there's different kinds of cults. This is a cult that sort of masquerades as Christianity, but it uses Christian terminology, but when you look at the actual real meaning behind the terms with Mormons, the meaning is completely different than what we see in the Bible. So just easy example is Jesus, and Jesus as the Son of God. Well, we believe that Jesus is the Son of God. The Bible teaches that. Mormons would say that they believe that too, but they also believe that Jesus and Lucifer are brothers, and so that's a problem, because their Jesus is a created being. The biblical Jesus is not a created being. So that's just one example. There are many, many other examples. Now, there's tons of Mormon people who honestly don't even know kind of the darker side of what their church believes. And I know we have Mormons that listen to our program here, and they enjoy it, and they assume that we're all basically saying the same thing. And occasionally we will have somebody call and say, well, wait, my church doesn't believe that. And that's just they haven't gone deep enough to discover that, well, actually, yes, the church does believe that.
Wow.
So, Bobby, you know a lot about Mormonism. What do you want to throw in there?
Well, no, I think what you're saying is great. And, I always just like to kind of start with what is a cult, because I could understand that people don't like the thought of being called a cult.
Yes.
And when we say the word cult, we're not trying, because I could imagine a Mormon who is a friendly person. I've met many of them. And here's the word cult. Well, we get these images of cult and we think of Jim Jones, and we think of David Koresh, and we think of Marshall Applegate or Applewhite with Heaven's Gate. And those are kind of the figures that we think of. Those would fit into some extremes as well. But now, as it relates to Mormonism, by cult, we're really just saying that somebody who rejects or denies one or more of the main Christian doctrines that we ascribe to. Now, that list can be lengthened depending upon, the discussion, but I would say at very minimum, the nature of God, that God is triune. Mormons have a different view of the Godhead than we do as Christians. The nature of salvation, the person of Jesus and who he is in relationship to the Father and the Spirit. The Word of God being the infallible Word that God has given to us, that we're not to add to. So I would say, they've added books. It's a different version of the Godhead. It's a different way of achieving salvation. And so these really would be the things that we'd say make them a cult. That doesn't mean that they're like David Koresh. I think we can clarify that. But it does mean that the belief system, and here's the thing, the Bible is very clear. Paul says in his message at Miletus to the Ephesians in Acts chapter 20 that watch out, because there are going to be wolves that are gonna come in and they're gonna destroy the flock. And then we see this kind of language showing up in sheep's clothing. So I think we tend to picture somebody cultic as somebody who's going to be unfriendly or ultra charismatic, and that's not always the case. Joseph Smith was ultra charismatic, but sometimes what happens is they're just really friendly, sheepish people. They look like us, they sound like us, but they're wolves in sheep's clothing.
I did a search on Bobby's 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube. Just type in the word Mormon there. And he's got like at least a dozen videos on Mormonism. So check those out when you get a chance. And I can imagine, Bobby, that none of these videos is going to instruct Christians to go out and bash Mormons or to, next time they see somebody ride by on their bicycle to tell them, you're going to hell or anything like that. There's a way to talk to these people, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think that there's a way for us to be gracious. I think that there's two approaches that are really wrong. Number one is don't talk to them at all. And number two, talk to them wrongly. I think that there's a proper approach.
Yeah.
I was listening to Andy Bannister today. Bob, you know Andy, right? Yeah.
I know of Andy for sure.
Okay, so Andy's a Muslim apologist, has a PhD in Islamic studies, and he's a friend of mine in the UK. And he said something about Islam that I think is helpful in this regard too. He said, we have to distinguish between Islam, the system, and Muslims. So, with Muslim people, you're going to get all kinds of diversity. You're going to get you're going to get the Taliban on the one level, and then you're going to get your doctor who's the most wonderful, patient, kind, your neighbor, whatever. And I think with Mormons, we have to understand we're talking about a system. We're talking about a theological system that is contrary to Scripture. And so that's not saying that Mormon people aren't kind, wonderful, nice, great neighbors, best friends. It's not saying anything like that. It's just saying the system itself. And so embracing the system, it takes you away from a true salvation. It doesn't bring you into a true relationship with God. So you end up having a false religious experience rather than a true experience with the true God.
Interesting stuff. AndyBannister.net is Andy's website. 2 N's in the name Bannister. Kathleen, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Let's go to Menifee and talk to Dee. Welcome to the program, Dee.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, I would like to know what an example is of a rumor of war, and the second thing is, can you explain Gog of Magog?
Okay.
And that's it.
Brian?
Well, you're thinking of the passage in Matthew 24 where Jesus speaks of there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So he's just describing what the age is going to look like. So from the time of the first coming of Jesus, his death, resurrection, and ascension, until he comes again, we're living in what the Bible calls the last days. So the last days are going to be marked by certain things. And one of the things that's going to mark the last days is wars and rumors of wars. So if you look back at the last 2,000 years of history, you're going to see that what Jesus said is absolutely the case. It's been a history of war and rumors of wars. And that's going to continue and probably even intensify until he comes back. So that's what that's referring to. Gog and Magog are a reference. There's two places in the Bible where Gog and Magog are mentioned. Ezekiel, chapter 38 and 39, and Revelation chapter 20. And they are a reference to these northern powers and a specific northern power. So north of Israel, Ezekiel talks about this invasion that's going to come, and it's going to come under this heading of Gog and Magog. So Magog is the land, Gog and Rosh are the rulers, and just exactly who those people are, we don't know for sure. They are people that live in the to the north of Israel, and so some have pegged them as Russia, and Russia might very well be involved. Some have thought of them as Turkey. Turkey might very well be involved as well. So we don't know exactly who they are, but it's going to be this great group of nations that come against Israel. Now, I personally believe that Gog and Magog is the Old Testament definition of what the New Testament calls the Battle of Armageddon. So it's the final war against God and Christ that's going to take place in the land of Israel. And then when you come to the book of Revelation, you have a reference to them, but this time the reference is 1,000 years after Christ has reigned on the earth. And so Gog and Magog reappear again. So to me, it seems like it's the final version of what happened before the millennium. So before the millennium, the nations gathered together, Gog and Magog, in this battle that the New Testament calls Armageddon. And so those same forces, which are basically inspired by Satan, are the forces that will, at the end of the millennium, try to once again take over the world and will be thwarted quickly.
Does that answer all of your questions, Dee?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective. Now, everything going on in the Middle East right now, sometimes when we see a flare-up or something like that, we just get a lot of questions. Is this in the Bible? And what do we tell them?
Well, I think it is and it's not. I think it's not specific, but I think generally it is. I think we're on a trajectory. We're moving toward that. But we don't know exactly when it's going to come. Mm-hmm. And now many people, especially Calvary Chapel pastors, they believe that the Gog and Magog battle is something that happens before even maybe the rapture of the church, or in some cases just slightly, momentarily after the rapture of the church. So they will focus on what's happening, say, in Russia and Russia's dealings with the Middle East, and they will see that as, okay, the Gog and Magog thing is about to happen anytime. Russia, you hear a lot of talk about that, right? Russia is going to invade. Yep. So, but they have settled on Gog and Magog being Russia. I think that I don't think you can biblically do that. Wow. I think you can speculate that it could be Russia, and I think Russia could be part of it, but I don't think you can dogmatically say that Gog and Magog are Russia. The Bible doesn't say that.
Dee, thanks for your question today on Pastor's Perspective, and it's time for us to take a break, but we will be back in just a few minutes to answer more of your questions. So call us with your questions. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. If you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, you guys can call us too. 888-564-6173, the number there on the bottom of your screen. Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway answering your questions today, and we'll be back with more of them in a moment. 888-564-6173. We're back. This is Pastor's Perspective. Thanks so much for listening and for watching. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. My name is Brian Perez. I'm here in the studio with Brian Broderson, the senior pastor of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California. And on the Bobby Cam, we've got author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway from the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube. And we're here till 5 p.m. Pacific time today, so call us anytime during the next 90 minutes, 888-564-6173. If you're already on hold, we'll try to get to you as soon as we can. 888-564-6173. Want some more questions, guys?
Yes.
You bet.
All right, let's start with Charlena in California. How you doing, Charlena?
I'm doing just fine.
Yay.
My question is, what's the difference between faith and trust? When you trust God, is that the same thing as having faith in Him?
Bobby,
Yeah.
what would you say? Oh,
Yes, that is the same.
so that's the short answer.
Yeah,
Bobby, what's the long
they're
answer?
synonyms, basically.
Well, I mean, I think that Brian is right, that these are very much like cinnamon, very much like cinnamon, synonyms. And this is helpful in a lot of ways because people look at us as Christians and think, oh, we just kind of cross our fingers. We just have blind faith. Well, we don't have blind faith. Faith is trust. And so when we say we're placing our faith in Jesus, what we're saying is we're trusting Jesus. So faith trusts. And to trust something is to have faith in it. And so they work together, these words, obviously. And so I think that what's good about this is we're not just blindly trusting. The object of our faith is the historical resurrected Jesus Christ that can be grounded in history, his life, his death, his resurrection. And so I think that's what's important. So faith without trust is not faith at all. So people who say, oh, I've got faith, but I don't trust, that's not faith. And so it's really important for us to make sure that we're not walking around going, oh, I got faith. What do you mean by that? Because it means that we're entrusting our life to the one who's trustworthy.
Hope that helps, Charlena. Thanks for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective. And speaking of the resurrection of Jesus, Mary's got a question for us. Hi there, Mary.
Hi, how are you today?
Doing well, thanks. How can we help you?
I was wondering, in the New Testament, it said that Jesus rose from the dead. And when he did, the other saints that were dead in Christ rose again, and they were walking the streets and went back to their families. I was just wondering, so were they living again, and did they have to die again? Or I just want to know your perspective on that.
Well, Mary, that is a passage that nobody knows the answer to the questions you're asking about that passage, because it doesn't tell us anything. It just says that they were, the bodies of the saints were resurrected and they were seen in the streets of Jerusalem. So what we do know is, at least more than likely, is that they were local saints. So it wasn't like Abraham and David and Moses and people like that. It was probably just local people that were believers in the Lord. I would say, this is just speculation because I don't know, I would say that they did die again, that they lived like Lazarus. Remember, we do have one person we have a few people we know that were raised in that sense from the dead. Yes. Lazarus was one of them, and then he, of course, lived and then went on to die again. So I would think that that's probably what happened with them as well. Bobby, what do you think?
Yeah, this is one of these passages of Scripture that you're spot on. This is all we have. Now, that doesn't mean that there was nothing else written about this extra biblically. We just don't have it. It could be discovered in a great discovery down the road, and that would be really helpful for a text like this, because we're left with questions. Like, somebody's asked before that called up, and I think they were wondering, why don't we have more information about what Lazarus experienced during those 4 days? And I think that would be wonderful if we had that. Like for some reason, God did not see fit to tell us that. It would be really cool to hear this. Now, the debate would be, now you have some people who will describe this as apocalyptic genre, and they won't even see this as historical. It's more an embellishment in the text. Like Mike Lacona, in his book, The Resurrection of Jesus, experienced some criticism around this, but he was looking at Roman and Jewish literature, saying that this would be common use. And so he's not trying to be liberal in it. He's trying to just understand the text. So some people say that. Then others would say, oh yeah, because Jesus would have had his glorified body, these resurrected saints, they might have had their glorified bodies in that moment, kind of as a special moment. But then that begs the question, they certainly wouldn't have died again if they had the glorified body. And then that would have required some sort of a rapture for them to be taken out of here. Otherwise, they'd still be roaming in those glorified bodies. So then if it wasn't a glorified body, then they would have had to die, obviously. And then that's the part that's kind of odd. Like, why don't we get anything about how long they live, what they told us? And I would love that. So I'm content, like you, Pastor Brian, just to be able to go, I don't know. And we don't have a whole lot there. And you know what? This is just one of many places where there's lots of opportunities for some speculation. And I'm content to, speaking of faith versus trust, to use those words and find out when I get in heaven.
So you don't think there's any 2,000-year-old people roaming the world somewhere?
I've seen some people that look like they're maybe 2,000, but
Right.
haven't checked their ID.
Right. Mary, does that help you?
That helped a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to Pastor's Perspective.
Bobby, I was thinking about this, though. I mean, this is one of the things that really always fascinates me about Scripture is its brevity so often, its lack of detail. I mean, to me, like, these kinds of things, they support the idea of biblical inspiration, that this isn't man's word, this is God's word. Because just think of it, like Lazarus, here's this guy, he's dead 4 days, Jesus raised him from the dead. I mean, if a human made that up, then Lazarus would become a major part of the story. He would tell his story, and he would be like the guy that you would send out now, like, hey, send the guy that was dead out there, and he's going to be, but doesn't say anything about him. Basically just tells us that he was having a meal with Jesus after I love the passage in Mark where it says, Jesus was, they were having the meal in the house there, and Lazarus, who was dead, was there at the table. And that's the last thing we're told about him. It's like, okay, wow, a dead guy. A guy was dead, but now he's having dinner, and end of the story.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah. And it's almost like even with other people that, that were raised from the dead, like, let's just say, I know it's debated, but I would lean more toward that Eutychus died. And you have other people that died, right? And so you sit there and you think, okay, we don't get stories about their experience either, and so we're left that. But one of the things that I take comfort in is in a very random set of verses right here, these two verses in Matthew, and you wish that there was more detail. I think of like Genesis 6:1-8 with the sons of God and daughters of men. I take comfort when the author writes in such a way that it's assumed that his audience knows what's going on. So because of this chronological distance that we suffer from, we need more details. But something so seemingly, what makes it so bizarre to us is the lack of detail. But what we should find comfort in is it was so phenomenal what happened. It's as if they didn't even need detail because it was a known story. And so I think that the very thing that we can feel from these oddities is because of chronology and time, but the original audience they were the ones that they would have been so familiar, and it didn't need the extra explanation that time has made us feel like we need.
Mm-hmm.
Some would say, though, that wouldn't it help the cause of Christianity if there were more details?
Well, some would say that perhaps, but I don't think so. I mean, that's like the same argument could be put toward miracles, right? Well, like if we could just see more miracles, more people would believe. Right. Mm-hmm. But we know that that's not true because the people that saw the miracles didn't believe when they saw them. So,
no, good point. 888-564-6173 is our number. Give us a call, 888-564-6173. Let's go to Virginia, talk to Scott. What's up, Scott?
Hey, how's it going? I have a question as how abortion relates to these vaccines, and specifically the Pfizer vaccine, and if I have a religious hill to die on to not take the vaccine. And I don't know how much detail you want on it, but I'm specifically asking about Pfizer because that one's been approved by the FDA, and the company I work for is basically telling me, if you don't get it, you can't work for us.
Mm-hmm. So you want to know if you can use the religious exemption. How many companies are offering that? Is every company offering that? Are they saying? Are they offering it? Yeah.
A religious exemption?
To vaccines?
I don't think so.
I've seen a few things, but...
Yeah, maybe. Well, Scott, the Pfizer, from what I understand, and this might help you if you could go back in our archives and listen to the last conversation I had with Dr. Lou Wing, who is a microbiologist who has done work on all of these different vaccinations. But I don't think the Pfizer or the Moderna, because they're this new technology. There's this whole new way of doing vaccines that they did that has to do with the RNA. They share that in common, where the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was more of a traditional vaccine. So I heard from people that the Pfizer and the Moderna, the problem there was it wasn't FDA approved, and because of this RNA, that was questionable, and they were worried that their DNA was going to be altered or something like that. Then I heard with the Johnson & Johnson, but they used fetal tissue in that. My friend who worked on these, who is a Christian, who is a pastor, who is a professor, who is a scientist, said that is not true, that they did not use fetal tissue in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So we don't have to worry about that.
Scott, thanks for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective. Bobby, did you want to add anything to what Brian just said?
No, I mean, I think part of the question on religious exemption, I think that for me personally, if somebody wanted to make that case on a vaccine, I think if their conscience was in the way, I could see them with integrity being able to say my conscience feels that, and that would be their religious right, so to speak. So that's going to be something that people are going to have to make. What do you think about that, Brian? Would that fit into religious objection if someone's conscience felt violated?
People have asked me, what does the Bible have to say about the vaccine and about, not taking it? Well, the Bible doesn't have anything to say about it. So this is a personal conviction thing. I had a conversation with a guy last night, and I've had a number of conversations over the past few days, a couple with medical workers. This person last night was not. And I'm curious, so I ask, why is it that you don't want the vaccine? And, some people, I think their ideas are just completely wrong because they're tying it to some conspiracy that will ultimately lead to the mark of the beast. And I think that okay, if that's your reasoning, then I'm going to try to help you through that because I don't think that's valid. Some people have the concern over the fact that the FDA had not approved it. Now the FDA has approved one, but now some are saying, well, they just did that just to get us to do it. So, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, so I can't really speak on that side of it. Bobby, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that you could have a case for conscience, like a conscientious objector, that your conscience just won't let you do it. But I don't know that you could have a biblical basis for saying that, well, my religion, my Christian religion tells me I can't get the vaccine. I don't think the Christian religion tells you that. So,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, the whole thing with the vaccine, too, we were talking about, the FDA yesterday, and I was saying, we've mentioned that, it's not FDA approved. But really, in some ways, I don't know how much that should impress us, given that the FDA doesn't approve vitamin D, but they do approve cigarettes. So I do think that we're, something worth thinking about.
yeah.
Very good point. Scott, thanks for your phone call today.
But, let me just say this, too. I think that this is obviously people are very, very passionate about this. And, as I've mentioned before, I got the vaccine. Bobby, you got the vaccine. Brian, you got the vaccine.
I've been vaccinated,
You've
yes.
been vaccinated. Okay. That's a little ambiguous. We'll have to have a talk about that.
Ambiguous Brian.
But anyway, I felt led to do it. I'm glad I did it. But, if somebody in all good conscience just says I can't get it, well, fine. I'm not going to try to force you to do it. I mean, now we're seeing, the thought was that you get the vaccination and you're going to be pretty much protected from COVID, and then you see a fair number of people with who have been vaccinated who now also have COVID.
Yeah.
And apparently not as severe as those who don't have it, but nevertheless, they still have it.
888-564-6173 is our number. Let's go to Elizabeth. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective. You're on with Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway. Thank you for calling 888-564-6173. Go.
Good afternoon. I have a question over the Solomon songs, the book in the Bible.
Yes.
What is the purpose of having that book with us? What God wants us to teach us over that book? It's a verse in the Bible that my mother really wants to get the significance over that. It's chapter 8, verse 6.
Mm-hmm. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm. For love is as strong as death, its jealousy unyielding as the grave. It burns like blazing fire, like a mighty flame.
Okay, yes, that's the one. My mother already paid for her funeral. She's going to be cremated. But she was telling me if I was going to be buried, I will ask you to put that verse in my plate, on top of my grave.
Mm-hmm.
What is the significance? What is the meaning?
Bobby, what say you about this verse?
Verse 6, set me as a seal upon your heart. And a seal was basically, you press into clay to create an image or an inscription. And then it would kind of be assigned ownership of an object as described here in the ESV Study Bible. And I think that the book Song of Solomon is great. Like, I don't take this as just this pure allegory between Christ and the church. I don't mind drawing out and seeing Christ in the scriptures as all scriptures point to him. But this is a story of love between Solomon and his Shulamite woman and his bride. And so what we see here is the power of love and the power of jealousy in the context of marriage. In fact, this is the only place where the word the Lord is used in the Song of Solomon. And so basically, it's the only place where you see the divine name, I should say, used in the Song of Solomon. So, when you think about this, this particular passage is teaching us how important love and jealousy is to protect our marital relationships and our relationship with God. And so I think it's such a beautiful verse. I mean, sometimes like married couples, they have this verse put on their wedding ring. Sometimes a husband or a wife, they'll have this tattooed, so to speak. And so I think it's a really beautiful verse. In fact, I just did my daughter's wedding, and I looking at this again, I thought, oh man, I should have used these verses.
Yeah.
in the ceremony. In fact, I loved teaching through the Song of Solomon. It is one of these things, though, that interpreting the book as a whole, I wonder if I've moved a little bit on that. Like at one time, it was like, I think I might have been so literalistic, and it almost seems to me like a poetic play describing the true love of them. But I think I taught it the first time thinking like they were actually talking to each other like this. And I'm going, I don't know that that's the case. I think it's more of a poetic play. The Dallas Theological Seminary literal hermeneutic had its hold on me, and I'm thankful that it does. But I look at this more like a poetic, it is poetry, but a poetic play, and it describes literal love, but it's not like this is the exact words they were saying to each other.
Yeah,
Brian, is how I would
thoughts?
Understand it. What about you, Brian?
Like you said, I just love this verse. I think it is obviously very poetic, and it's very powerful. And as far as the book goes, though, I have a hard time seeing the Christ and the church analogy in it. Yeah. Maybe there's a few places where obviously there would be an application of that, but I mean, there are commentators who see it just exclusively as that. This is Christ and the church. This is J. Vernon McGee said this was his favorite book of the Bible. This is the greatest book of the Bible because it talks about the love of Christ between him and his bride. And I'm like, I don't see it. So it's the greatest book in the Bible according to J. Vernon McGee, and I don't see it. I mean, I think it. I think it's a book that just talks about marital love, and of course, it's Hebrew literature, and in the Hebrew literature, they're going to have that element, and that's what it is. And yet, obviously, it is inspired. So, I mean, when you talk about love being stronger than death, you think of the love of Christ and how He went to the grave because of love. And there's beautiful pictures there as well.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
May I say something?
Yes, please do.
Well, if the Bible is inspiration by the Holy Spirit,
yep,
for the man right there for us, I was thinking before I even talked to you, Pastor, there it's something the God's Spirit put in Solomon to discern that way. For us to interpret this is the God's power or God's love in our church. Mm-hmm. Just excuse my English, but that's exactly what you just say in there. In a way, can be God's love over the church.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that, like you said, that is what, the passage, especially the passage that you're referring to. And I think your mother, her request to have this on her, it was a gravestone or whatever it's going to be, I think that's beautiful. It's a beautiful passage.
Yeah. Elizabeth, thank you for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective. Let's now go to Daniel in California. What can we help you with, Daniel?
Hi, Pastors. Thank you for taking my call. So my question is, what role, with the recent announcement that there is unidentified aerial phenomenon that's being acknowledged finally by the government, what role does the UAP, more commonly the UFOs, have, or what role do they play in our salvation? Is there any role that they play at all? Is it just a distraction by the enemy? What are they in terms of what the Bible says about them?
What do you mean by what's their role in our salvation?
Do they have a role at all?
Okay. Bobby, what would you say?
Well, as far as, the government talking about some of these unidentified aerial phenomenon in space, for me, I don't see that we even really know what this is. I think that somebody obviously knows what it is. I don't think it's extraterrestrial personally. If it was, it wouldn't shake up my faith. But the Bible is not given to teach us about other planets and things like that. So these are speculative areas. The Bible teaches us that God created all the heavens and the earth. And then the Bible, after telling us that he's the creator of the heavens and the earth, instructs us on his salvific plan here for us on earth. And so I don't think of these objects being able to tell us anything about the end times personally.
So this missions meeting that you had earlier today, Pastor Brian, are you planning on sending missionaries to other planets if, in fact, there are UFOs?
Well, we were discussing that.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
yeah.
what took me so long. That's why I was late.
Daniel, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. And if you're on hold right now, don't hang up, because we're going to record a full hour of the program. We'll start in just a few minutes. Give us time to refill our coffee cups, and then we'll be back. And we're going to keep the phone lines open during this next hour as well at 888-564-6173. And we'll be streaming this hour on Facebook and YouTube, so you can watch that way as well. But if you've got a question, call us 888-564-6173. Pastor's Perspective is sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.